There is a need for the teaching of human skills because we haven't been doing it. For too long, we've been primarily ranking people and promoting people based on their performance. So if your numbers are good, you'll get a promotion, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you're a good leader. Being good at your job doesn't mean that you're good at leading other people at that same job. And so leaders are recognizing. Remember the way we used to live our lives, if you go back 30 or 40 years, is we didn't get everything from one place or one person. We used to get our sense of community from the bowling league, for example. We had barbecues with our neighbors. We would go to church on Sundays. That's where we got our sense of purpose and belonging. And we went to work and made a living from work to pay our bills. And over the course of time, church membership has gone down. The bowling leagues have gone away. We don't really hang out with our neighbors as much. We stay indoors much more. And now we're asking our work to replace all of those things. We want our community, our belonging, our purpose. We want our social lives. And now we want our politics to be all completely fulfilled at our place of work. And unfortunately, you make the comparison to personal relationships, and it's exactly right. We're asking too much of one person or one organization. It's an impossible standard, which leaves us disappointed, angry, and frankly, in a sort of constant mode of searching. The grass is greener somewhere else, I hope.
So what are business leaders saying to you? Are they saying, like, I can't keep up with this? They want me to take a stand on politics. They want me to take care of their mental health, their emotional health, and pay their bills. What do I do?
So there is a lot of stress. I mean, businesses right now, they feel like there's a little bit of chaos. Add into the fact that they're even struggling to get people to come back to work. They're trying to figure out the right balance of what hybrid work looks like. And quite frankly, nobody has figured it out. The advice that I'm giving is we're in a position of crazy flux, and we're going to have to just sort of wait a little bit to see where all the dust lands. Still, we have to practice good leadership and do our best to make people feel seen, heard, and understood. However, that's still
okay. So how do we do that? How do we practice good leadership if we have a company, like you have a company? How do we practice good leadership if we're parents and adult kids are saying, what do we do? How do we practice good leadership in a relationship?
One of the things that's missing is human skills, quite frankly. We talk a lot about hard skills. We go to college to learn these hard skills so we can get a good job. Our companies teach us the hard skills, the skills we need to do well at work. But we talk about soft skills, and I hate that term because hard and soft are opposites, and I hate to think that those things are opposites. But really, they're human skills. And we need to teach human skills both in our universities and in our companies. Things like active listening, things like empathy, how to have a difficult conversation, how to have an effective confrontation, how to give and receive feedback. And these kinds of skills, not only are they immensely valuable at work, it turns out the companies that teach those skills, their employees report having better relationships with their spouses and with their kids back home.
So are you saying that business leaders are coming to you and saying, I want to teach these skills, and they bring in somebody to teach it to them, or do they teach it to the entire company?
Both. The answer is both. There is a need for the teaching of human skills because we haven't been doing it. For too long, we've been primarily ranking people and promoting people based on their performance. So if your numbers are good, you'll get a promotion, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you're a good leader. Being good at your job doesn't mean that you're good at leading other people at that same job. And so leaders are recognizing there is a skill gap that they have to fill.
So you talk about you have the book, The Infinite Game, the infinite mindset versus the finite mindset. Mm-hmm. And that could also apply, once again, not just to businesses or politics, but also to relationships and parenting, right? So if someone is sitting there watching this and they're struggling with adult kids, they might be struggling in their relationship, they're struggling at work. Maybe they're not the leader at work, but they're wanting more from their work, or they're a political leader. What are you suggesting to people to talk about right now? How do we lead people in small incremental steps to get to where we can be a more optimistic society and group of people?
Well, Leadership starts at home. And this is, I
Yeah.
think, what people forget, which is we put pressure on our companies, we put pressure on our politicians, we sit back and say, why aren't you doing this? And the reality is our politics and our politicians are largely a reflection of us. We're complaining that we're not getting these things from them. We're complaining that they're divisive, that they're stubborn, that they don't listen to each other.
Yeah.
Well, that's us. That's us. They're a reflection of us. And the reality is, you don't need rank to be a leader. I know many people who sit at very high levels of organizations who are not leaders. They have authority, and we do as they tell us because they have authority over us, but we wouldn't trust them or follow them. And yet there are people with no formal position of authority that have made the choice to look after the person to the left of them and to look after the person to the right of them. And we trust them and follow them anywhere. Those are the leaders. So leadership is quite frankly the awesome responsibility to take care of those around us. And every single one of us has the opportunity to be the leader we wish we had, whether at work or at home. It's the one who takes the initiative to take care of others.
So what does that look like if somebody says, yeah, I want to be what Simon just described. I want to be that person. I may not have the rank or the authority. How do I begin?
So again, it's like eating an elephant. You can start anywhere. Like, I want to get into shape, I have to do curls, and I have to do squats, and I have to do it doesn't matter where to start anywhere. And I mentioned some of the skills before. Active listening, I think, is the big one, and leaning into tension. So we have tension at work and we have tension at home. And usually the way we address tension is we either ignore it, we're passive aggressive, or we sometimes wait for it to build up and then it bubbles out and boils up and we attack someone, or we start in an unhealthy way where we make someone feel pressed into a corner with some sort of accusation. And so the ability to lean into tension in a healthy way and tell someone how we're feeling in a situation and necessarily take responsibility for our part creates a scenario, creates an environment in which the other person is not only more likely to listen, but more likely to take responsibility for their actions as well. I'll give you a perfect example from my own life. Someone very, very dear to me told me that she's been struggling to trust me over the past few months. I immediately got defensive. I immediately say, how could you tell me this? Why didn't you tell me, the week it happened? Why did you wait to tell me months after this is why you felt this way? And she interrupted me and said, you're getting defensive. I just need you to hear me. And I had to check myself and realize that because it's hard to hear that I'd done anything that made somebody not trust me, the reality is I had to hold space and say, tell me more. What else? And just let her tell me how she felt without taking it personally. The result was profound. Not only did she feel very held and very trusted in that moment, but I learned the skill. I learned to sort of put my own feelings aside for a moment to allow another person to feel heard. And I think that is a skill that's just completely missing at work and at home.
Yeah, so that's like the idea, like if I think about my bosses coming up in the network news business as holding space for me, it's just not even possible. I can't even imagine. They would have told me, there's the door, walk through it if you don't like it here.
Yeah.
So do you think that what particularly young workers are asking of their business leaders is to hold space, to actively listen to their lives, and leaders are completely ill-equipped to do that? That feels awkward. That feels like, go talk to your spouse, go talk to your therapist. That's not my job.
The answer is yes and no. I mean, it's not, I would love for people in leadership positions to have that skill, of course. But really, I want everybody in the company to have that skill as well, so that we can turn to each other and say, I'm struggling. And somebody else can say to us, tell me more, go else. How can, and hold that space for that person, hold that emotion for them. However, it comes with a caution, which is there's still such a thing called emotional professionalism, which Seth Godin talks about a lot, which is we don't have the right to, because we're having a bad day, to sit in a meeting like this and give one-word answers when asked. That is emotionally unprofessional. And one of the things that I saw, particularly from young people, it's not exclusively young people, but it does skew young, which is especially during COVID. If you think that before COVID, we would go to work, then we'd go out with our friends and we'd complain about work. And that's perfectly healthy. right? It's perfectly healthy to go and vent to people who we don't work with. And then we go back to work the next day and we feel a lot better. But during COVID, that healthy space to vent was taken away. We didn't go out with our friends after work. And so what ended up happening is we have this tension. We need to get it out. And so we start looking for it at work. And again, skews younger, particularly young people, would find an empathetic ear at work, somebody who was just good at listening, a good empath. And they wouldn't just complain about their boss, although that happened too. They would say, I hate my relationship and I don't want to live at home anymore. And what am I want to do with my life? And these people, these empaths, were taking on all of this stress. And I heard multiple stories of people who were quitting, claiming burnout. But if you looked at their workload, their workload shouldn't have burnt them out. It's because they were overwhelmed with of taking on everybody else's stress.
Got
and
it.
so they were holding space for people, but these people weren't respecting their boundaries. And so, yes, we want people to have that skill set, but there is a limit there is a limit to how far we can bring all of our personal things to work, to people at work.
So where would you say, kind of, how would you grade our relationships kind of across the board in 2023? Are we moving professionally in the right direction? Are workplaces in a year from now going to be more filled with empathetic listeners, with people more adept at human skills? Are relationships going to be less dependent on one person and more in a village? Are parental figures going to be more, are they going to get used to these terms, boundaries and triggering and space? Because it's a new vocabulary out there in all of these areas.
The simple answer is yes. I mean, look, it's embarrassing that I have a career, right? Like, I talk about things like trust and communication. There should be no demand for my work, but there is. And I see that as an opportunity. I see that as something hopeful. The fact that you're doing a story on this, if this was 20 years ago, they would laugh at you and say, no, we don't need that story. The fact is people are interested in this. The fact is people are wanting to learn. The fact is companies are investing in this kind of education, both for themselves, for the leaders in the company, and for their employees. And the topic of mental health has been destigmatized, which is very, very, very good. So yes, I am hopeful that over the course of time, we actually will get better at these things and we will develop these skills.
You talked about kind of millennials and younger people in the workplace, but there are still a lot of boomers, my age and so, and in the workplace. Do you see these, many people say the generational divide is what the issue is, that these generations are just completely different human species. They don't have the same language. They don't look at work at all the same way. And I noticed that a little bit myself. We came up in work and it was a very different place. Different things were expected, different things from the boss. Do you see growth more in one generation? Do you see this generational divide, or do you think that the generations can actually look to the other to gain a little bit of what the other has learned?
Well, generational divide has existed for as long as there's ever been generations. So that's not a new idea. And,
Right.
And it's fairly common that older generations want to keep things the same because it's familiar and they're good at it. And younger generations want to break everything because, they're younger and they see new opportunities. And there's always been that tension, regardless of the time frame we live in. But I think, quite frankly, there's responsibility on both sides. Yes, the generational divide on how we view work is very different in this modern day. And what I preach is empathy, which is try to understand the point of view of the other. And that goes in both directions. Now, it's expected that the leader should go first, but it does go the other way as well. So again, going back to those human skills, listening and empathy will benefit both sides.